On November 6, Netanyahu used the American election results as a smokescreen for multiple terrorist attacks inside of the Gaza Strip, the West Bank, and in southern Lebanon. But it looks like right now they're on the verge of their own civil war as the IDF is actively marching in the streets against Netanyahu. More than 100 patients and injured people were evacuated from Gaza by the World Health Organization. Children with critical conditions, all of these ambulances and buses. But Kogat still refuses to allow any adults to transfer, and so many more children were left behind. Like Osamat Yusuf al-Rok, he is in dire need of treatment abroad due to his current conditions. His spinal cord was severed by the occupation's strikes. He cannot breathe on his own, and he cannot move. His life is reliant entirely on the hospital having electricity. All you have to do to help is speak about him, to go to the journalist's page and share his story. The director of Al Auda says that they don't have the necessary fuel to generate electricity for the hospital, and they're receiving many patients who need emergency care. They had requested the World Health Organization send a delegation to Al Auda so that they could provide their services and supply fuel and medicines and food for Al Auda Hospital, but the World Health Organization has not been able to send them. They are currently being deprived of medicine, supplies, and fuel. He appeals for the World Health Organization to expedite the process to bring food, fuel, medicine, and medical supplies so that they could continue to save lives. And they need to, because the bombs have been falling non-stop on Beit Lahia. Columns of smoke rise into the sky larger than anything that I have ever seen since the beginning of this aggression, leading to martyrs and wounded in the Al-Shema area, including killing the baby, Shema Nassim, roughly 1 year old. And there is confusion among the residents of Beit Lahia. Are they fleeing towards death or from it? Their new evacuation orders require them to go through a military checkpoint. Repeated attacks on the Al-Shema area and the Al-Emel area of Beit Lahia make it difficult to stay. Today's first massacre was on the Al-Said family in the Al-Fahura area of Beit Lahia, wrapped in trash bags because they are out of body bags. The family, including children, must be buried in a mass grave. They cover the grave with poles and sheet metal. Their intention is to give them all a proper burial as soon as they can. Families inside of Gaza City are now living in destroyed and burned down homes. They have no other options as they've been displaced from Beit Lahia. The exterior of the building appears to be heavily charred, but it's even worse inside. A roof here may protect from rain, but there are no walls to protect from the heavy winds. And the fire damage threatens the structural integrity of the building. A bomb simply nearby could have it come down on them. Hassam Shabbat details the harsh conditions that thousands are now forced to live with, where they now live amongst the homes that barely remain, and the suffering does not end. Like the child Razan Muhsin, covered in burns and blood after the illegal occupation targeted them in Nusayrat, or the 3 martyrs from the Abu Dhaka family. Their home was targeted in the Al-Fahari area, just east of Khan Yunis city. And they're still martyrs and injured underneath the rubble. Here, they are carried out for burial. And this time they have body bags. Because the south, though besieged, is still receiving some medical supplies. The men of Nusayrat continue to boycott the markets, protesting the high prices in the streets. There are unfair markups occurring by families with a monopoly on goods, and it's driving up prices for everybody. And this is now the 2nd day of mass protests, and they plan to take on these merchants head-to-head. There is no room for this kind of injustice, not now. There is no need for any more suffering. Occupation forces continue to destroy infrastructure around the area of Jenin, using bulldozers to dig up the roadways, and inside of northern occupied Palestine, the sirens sounded. Interceptor rockets raced to intercept missiles coming in from Hezbollah. $150,000 for each interceptor missile. And they missed. A rocket fell directly, without exploding, on a vehicle in Tel Aviv. The vehicle was parked and there were no occupants inside of the vehicle. And the settlers show up to gawk at it, taking videos and exclaiming about how large it is. Interceptor missiles that didn't miss rained shrapnel down on vehicles. busting out the back windows. And this made major headlines as a massive strike on Israeli soil. But meanwhile, in Jabalia, these are the strikes that they consider to be precise. These are what they consider limited operations. Columns of smoke that rise nearly a quarter mile into the sky. Or like these strikes on the Abu Saleh Ahmed family home, which had been previously targeted in Nusayrat. Or like the mortars from Herbet El Adaz, collected by civil defense in Rafah. They like to target people on bikes. And despite these missions being very dangerous for paramedics and civil defense, they still recovered him. And because they did so, his brother could say goodbye. Regularly, Palestinian men break down weeping. "Have mercy on us, O God," he pleads. He lost several members of his family today. They dropped bombs in the center of Baalbek Market, inside of southern Lebanon. They told this woman to flee Beit Lahia through a very specific corridor. And when she arrived, they detained her son and they shot him on the spot. But he wasn't the only one they did this to. The occupation is carrying out crimes against humanity all day. And most of it is going unseen. Right outside of a fire and rescue station in Gaza City, the illegal occupation dropped a reconnaissance missile on a crowd of people, reducing their bodies to shreds. These are anti-tank missiles being used on human flesh, because cruelty is the point. And even more raids on Dar al-Hawra, in the southern suburbs of Beirut. In densely populated cities, they drop bombs, under the pretense that there is a cruise missile inside of every home. And their strikes continued, with mass casualty events a daily occurrence. The illegal occupation is functioning as a terrorist organization. Ununiformed Israeli combatants attacking men in the town of El Zaim, east of occupied Jerusalem. These are the daily victims of Israeli aggression. A child covered in blood pulled from the back of an ambulance. And the transfer of these remains from Gaza City. Israeli combatants round up men in the north of Gaza, blindfold them, number them, and then execute them. And they take anybody that they don't execute hostage. They struck the Al-Saniya family in New Camp, just north of Nusayrat. And this child's hand reaches out from underneath the rubble, desperate to be saved. Stones and blocks removed from on top of him. He's finally pulled from the rubble, but he couldn't breathe the entire time he was down there. He was just a boy. Searches for martyrs carried out by flashlight, and survivors too. The illegal occupation had targeted a family home and set it on fire. These strikes martyred many of the family members, and they injured many more. Fathers covered in blood, and children martyred by the illegal occupation. This boy was scarcely older than 5 or 6 years old, and he was one of many. These scenes are a daily occurrence in Gaza, every single day. And these are the children that managed to survive. Most of the time, children such as this report wishing that they hadn't. As always, there was an infant in the home, and they have to inspect the baby for any wounds. These children are desperate for the world to care, so they can stop losing their fathers, so they can sleep without being buried underneath rubble. And it kept happening. The illegal occupation had also targeted the Al-Asif family in Beit Lahia, but here the illegal occupation has forced civil defense and ambulance crews to shut down. So it's just volunteers trying to pick up stones. In Jenin, the illegal occupation had sniped this man. His daughter here is begging him to wake up. She can't say goodbye. And as all of this occurs, as you cast your ballot, Meta shut down the account of Anas al-Sharif, one of the most prominent journalists in northern Gaza, actively being threatened with assassination by the illegal occupation, trying to influence how you vote and how much of this news you see. News like the little boy who tried to say goodbye to his mother martyred in Nusayrat, peeking into the body bag for one last look at her, before his brother comes to hold him while he sobs. This boy is scarcely older than 5 years old. They don't want you to know about the destruction of infrastructure in Jenin. They don't want to let you know that that's why they are clashing with occupation forces as they invade. They don't want you to see the aggression of the Israeli combatants. But even they are fed up. Even the Israeli terrorists are now protesting against Netanyahu, while settlers confront them in the streets. Hundreds of Israeli combatants are walking here, marching along the highway. America is supporting Netanyahu against the will of their own people. All while Netanyahu sends the worst of his little toy soldiers to shoot children inside of Gaza City as they sleep in the streets, thanks to the displacement by the illegal occupation, and to storm the city of Tulkarm, sending in gangs of soldiers driving bulldozers so they can destroy even more civilian infrastructure. These are the children that the illegal occupation targets. The families injured in strikes the illegal occupation considers to be precise. The babies. And if you had an active duty serviceman in your home, this could be your children. If you had active duty servicemen in your neighborhood, this could be your family, pushing all of your belongings and your children on a cart as you displace your homes. And as American Civil War looms, I want you to remember these images, because this is the precedent that the world has set for resistance, and no one stopped it.